For 6 years as a full-time housewife, every time I asked my husband for living expenses, it felt like begging. $1,500 a month. An amount he made me feel like he was handing over $100,000. One day I'd had enough. I stopped doing housework, refused to care for his wheelchair-bound mother, and even dropped our daughter off at his office for him to take care of. Then I found a job and began living my own life. When the house fell into chaos, my husband came crawling back, begging for forgiveness. Staring at the empty balance in my bank account, I mustered the courage to send my husband a message. "Mike, are you busy? It's time to transfer this month's living expenses." The message vanished into the void with not so much as a reply. My daughter, Annie, tugged on my hand, begging for cake. She kept pulling me toward the door. I tried to calm her down. "Mommy doesn't have money right now. Let's wait until Daddy gives me the money and then I'll take you, okay?" Annie, always understanding, nodded and stopped insisting. Her reaction broke my heart. We weren't a poor family, far from it. How had it come to this? Why did my daughter have to tread so carefully just to ask for something as simple as a cake? I sent Mike another message. "Honey, are you busy? If you're not, could you transfer this month's expenses when you have a moment? Annie really wants some cake, but I don't have the money." Mentioning Annie seemed to get his attention. This time he sent me a voice message, his tone dripping with irritation. "Got it. Stop nagging. I'm busy, okay? I'll send it later." Reassured, I left it at that and went to the kitchen to start cooking. Halfway through making dinner, Annie suddenly started vomiting and having diarrhea. Scared me to death. I rushed her to the hospital immediately. But when we arrived, Mike still hadn't sent the money. I didn't even have enough to pay for Annie's medication. I had no choice but to call him. As soon as Mike picked up, he snapped, his voice full of anger. "Didn't I tell you I'm busy? What part of that don't you understand? You're like a debt collector. So annoying. I'll send the money when I have time. Stop bothering me." Then he hung up on me. I stood there in shock, my phone still pressed to my ear. A wave of frustration and helplessness washed over me, and tears started streaming down my face. How had my life come to this? I thought back to when I first met Mike. We'd been introduced through mutual friends and it was love at first sight. At the time, Mike's career was just taking off. We got married quickly and moved in with his mother, Susan. Susan had been wheelchair-bound for years. Her condition had made her temper volatile, and most housekeepers couldn't stand working for her. Mike, focused on advancing his career, had asked me to quit my job and become a full-time housewife. This way I could manage the household and take care of his mother. He'd promised me that if I stayed home, he would hand over his entire salary, making me the true mistress of the household. In the beginning, he kept his promise. He handed me his paycheck every month without fail. But over time, he began making excuses. He needed money for business entertainment, to maintain relationships with his superiors and so on. Eventually, he took the salary card back. From then on, he only transferred a few $1,000s to me each month for household expenses. At first, it was $4,000 or $5,000. Then it dropped to $3,000. Eventually, it dwindled to $1,500. Now, even with such a small allowance, he would delay transferring the money. Like today, I'd already asked him twice and he still hadn't sent it. Without that $1,500, I was utterly powerless. I couldn't even afford medicine for my child. I swallowed my pride and borrowed a few $100s from a friend to cover the emergency. When I got home, Mike and Susan were waiting. They didn't ask about Annie's condition. Instead, they berated me, loudly and mercilessly. When I got home, Mike wasn't back yet. But his mother, Susan, who had been napping all afternoon, was wide awake and furious. The moment she heard me come in, her voice echoed through the house, sharp and cutting. "You worthless woman. Where have you been? Get in here and take care of me." Swallowing my frustration, I helped Susan out of bed and into her wheelchair, then wheeled her into the living room. She glanced around, noticing the empty house, and her anger flared again. "It's this late and you haven't made dinner? What are you even doing? Mike will be home soon. Are you planning to starve him? All you do is laze around here. Honestly, I don't even know why my son married you." Her insults barely registered anymore. After years of hearing the same words, I had grown numb. When I first married into this family, Susan had been just as harsh. Back then, her words would send me running to Mike, crying and pleading for him to intervene. But Mike never truly stood up for me. Instead, he would soothe me with kind words or buy me small gifts to calm me down, never once attempting to confront his mother. She's in a lot of pain because of her condition, he would explain. That's why she's irritable. Please try to be patient, for my sake. And so I endured. Year after year. Mike came home not long after. At dinner, I worked up the courage to ask him again. Honey, can you send me this month's living expenses now? I'm out of money and I need to buy groceries tomorrow. Instead of transferring the money, Mike responded with a sarcastic sneer. You women have it so easy. You don't even have to work. You just sit at home waiting for the men to bring in the money. Then as soon as the month starts you nag nonstop. Do you have any idea how hard I work to earn that money? He said it as if I had chosen not to work, as if I had always been this dependent. I had quit my job to become a housewife because he begged me to. As if his words weren't enough, Susan chimed in, throwing fuel on the fire. Exactly. My son works so hard every day and you're always pestering him for money. You think he's made of money? You should learn to spend less. I tried to reason with them. I've been budgeting as tightly as I can. $1,500 a month barely covers groceries, utilities, and Annie's snacks. Mike slammed his plate down, cutting me off. What do you mean $1,500 isn't enough? How much more do you want? You greedy woman. Every word felt like a dagger, each one stabbing deeper than the last. At first I thought I could let it go, just endure it like always. But then Susan crossed the line. While picking at her food she muttered, "And that useless little girl of yours. Why are you wasting money buying her cake? What's the point? You'd be better off saving that money to help my son." That was the breaking point. I couldn't hold it in any longer. Enough. I shouted, slamming my plate upside down on the table. Turning to Mike, I yelled, "You act like $1,500 is a fortune, like I'm asking for millions. You tell me not to nag you, but you never send the money unless I do. Do you know how humiliating it is to have to borrow money just to take Annie to the hospital?" Then I pointed at him, my voice rising even further. "Mike, I had a job once, I was independent. You're the one who begged me to quit to stay home and care for your mother in our house. Do you think I wanted this? Do you think I enjoy relying on you?" I turned to Susan, my voice dripping with the anger I'd suppressed for years. "And you're always complaining about me spending your son's money. Have you ever thought about why I'm even here? If it weren't for you, do you think I'd have quit my job to become your nursemaid? Do you have any idea how much it would cost to hire someone to take care of you, a paralyzed old woman? $3,000 or $4,000 a month minimum. And here I am doing it all for a measly $1,500. You should be grateful." I felt a wave of relief as I let it all out. Mike and Susan, on the other hand, were furious. "Mandy, have you lost your mind?" Mike shouted, his face a mixture of shock and disbelief. I glared at him. "No, Mike, I've never been more clear-headed. From now on I'm done. I'm done asking you for money. I'm done managing this house. I'm done caring for your mother. Nanny, we'll take turns raising her. I'm not doing this alone anymore. Let's see how you manage without me holding everything together." Ignoring their protests and Susan's shrill complaints, I grabbed Annie and went to my room. I expected Annie to be scared after my outburst. Instead, her eyes sparkled as she looked up at me. "Mommy, you were amazing today." I froze for a moment before saying, "But if I start working again, I might not have as much time to take care of you." "That's okay, Mommy," she chirped. "I'm already 5. My teachers will take care of me at school, and on weekends I can take care of myself." Her words broke me. I hugged her tightly, tears streaming down my face. The only good thing to come out of my marriage to Mike was Annie, a bright, thoughtful, and loving little girl. That night I resolved never to look back. I would no longer lift a finger for that house. I thought Mike and Susan might last 3 days without me. It turned out I'd overestimated them. They didn't even make it through the night. At 10 p.m. I had just gotten Annie to sleep when Mike came looking for me. He seemed awkward, handing me a check. "Here's this month's money. Also, my mom had an accident. Can you go clean it up?" It seemed that having a wheelchair-bound mother who relied on adult diapers for everything made it impossible for Mike to manage even one night without me. All those times I'd silently taken on the burden without complaint, he must have thought it was easy for me. Well, not anymore. His compliant, ever-obliging wife was gone for good. I pushed the check back into his hands. "Oh, I wouldn't dare take your money. Otherwise, you and your mother will just keep calling me useless. From now on, I'll get a job and earn my own money. As for this house, your mother, and everything else, you figure it out. I'm done. Mike's brow furrowed as he snapped, "Come on, Mandy, don't be so ungrateful. I'll add another $1,500 to this month's budget. $3,000. Just stop throwing a tantrum and go clean up after my mom." He handed me a new check for $3,000. I returned it to him again untouched. Mike was livid. "Enough already. If you keep this up, don't expect me to give you another cent." I'd already made up my mind. Who needed his money anymore? I shoved him toward the door. "Bye-bye." Fuming, Mike stormed out of the room, pacing and cursing under his breath. But he had no choice, he had to go clean up after Susan himself. Let him. The worst was yet to come for those two. When I got up the next morning, Mike was already gone, probably off to work. The moment I opened my door, Susan's shouting began. "You lazy woman. Sleeping in until now? Are you trying to starve me to death? Go make me breakfast." I laughed coldly. "Susan, do you still think I'm the same daughter-in-law you can boss around? I made it clear to Mike yesterday, I'm done. I won't take another penny from him, and I'm not taking care of you anymore. Whoever's mom you are, that's who needs to take care of you. But let's be honest. Do you really think your son, who's so used to being waited on hand and foot, has the patience to deal with you?" Susan's confident demeanor faltered. She knew her son better than anyone after all. Her expression shifted quickly, her tone softening as she forced an awkward smile. "Now, Mandy, don't be impulsive. Couples shouldn't be so petty about dividing responsibilities. Mike works hard to earn money, and it's only fair that you manage the house and care for the elderly. But of course, it's his fault for forgetting to give you the living expenses. When he gets home, I'll make sure to give him a good scolding." Her sudden change of attitude wasn't satisfying, it was pathetic. For years, I'd taken care of Susan without a single word of thanks. Now that I threatened to stop, she was all smiles and flattery. People like her are truly shameless. I ignored her and made breakfast, preparing just enough for Annie and myself. Susan sat nearby, glaring at us with fury as her stomach growled. Her face turned green with anger. "You cruel, heartless woman. Are you trying to starve me?" "Don't pin this on me," I replied calmly. "I told Mike last night I'm done taking care of you. He knew and still left you alone at home. If anyone's trying to starve you, it's your precious son, not me." After breakfast, I took Annie and left the house. If Mike wanted to keep claiming that I did nothing all day while he slaved away to earn money, let him handle everything without me for a while. Let's see how long he can last for taking care of his daughter at work today. At Mike's office, I walked straight in and up to his desk. The moment he saw me, his face darkened. He didn't wait for an explanation and launched into an angry tirade. "My mom just called and said you only made breakfast for yourself and Annie," completely ignoring her. "Mandy, what's your problem?" I met his glare calmly and replied, "I believe I made myself very clear last night. I'm not taking another dime from you, and I'm done taking care of your mom. Do you not understand plain words?" Mike, clearly conscious of his colleagues nearby, lowered his voice but couldn't hide his irritation. "Then why are you here? Can't you see I'm busy?" "Oh, so only you get to be busy?" "Let me tell you, Mike, I'm busy too. I'm busy looking for a job. Since we're heading toward an equal partnership marriage, it's only fair we share parenting duties equally. I don't owe you anything. I took care of Annie yesterday. Today she's all yours." As if on cue, Annie let go of my hand and ran over to Mike. "Daddy, it's your turn to take care of me today. Mommy needs a break." Mike's face flushed with frustration. "Mandy, are you insane? What do you expect me to do, bring a child to work? How does that look?" "That's your problem to figure out," I said firmly, shrugging off his attempt to grab my arm as I turned and walked out the door. After leaving Mike's office, I went straight to a domestic staffing agency to look for a job. My qualifications weren't anything special, and years as a full-time housewife had left me out of touch with the professional world. At my age, it was unlikely a corporate job would even consider me. But housekeeping? That was my forte. To my surprise, I aced 2 interviews. Both agencies were impressed with my skills and assured me they'd contact me for trial assignments as soon as a suitable family needed help. Walking out of those interviews, I felt a renewed sense of hope for the future. If I was going to do housework anyway, I might as well do it for people who valued it. At least I'd earn my paycheck without enduring the indignity of being called lazy or useless. Just as I was brimming with optimism, my phone rang. It was Annie and she was crying. Her sniffles and shaky voice broke my heart. "What's wrong, sweetheart? Don't cry. Take your time and tell Mommy what happened." "Mommy. Daddy got yelled at by his boss because he brought me to work. Then Daddy threw me outside the office. There's no one here I know. I'm so scared." "What?" "That bastard Mike had abandoned our daughter just because he couldn't handle the consequences of his own actions." Panicking, I rushed to find her. When I finally found Annie, safe but frightened, I let out a sigh of relief. Her tear-streaked face made me want to scoop her up and comfort her. But I stopped myself. If I gave in now, Mike would only use this tactic to manipulate me in the future. An idea sparked in my mind, a way to teach Mike a lesson he wouldn't forget. Calming myself, I dialed the police. "Hello, officer. I'd like to report a case of child abandonment. Could you please come immediately?" The mention of a child being abandoned prompted a swift response. The officers arrived at the scene in no time. A kind female officer comforted Annie, gently calming her down. Using the information Annie provided, they quickly identified Mike as her father. When the police showed up at Mike's office, he was caught completely off guard. His face turned pale as he stammered, "This is a misunderstanding. How could I abandon my own daughter? She was just being naughty, so I left her outside to reflect for a bit." The officer's tone was stern. "Naughty or not, you can't leave a child that young outside unattended. What if something dangerous had happened to her?" Sensing the perfect opportunity, I rushed in, playing my part to perfection. "Mike, you bastard. How could you leave Annie outside like that? What do you expect me to do? I've given you everything. I bore your child, raised her, and cared for your paralyzed mother. And you can't even give me $1,500 a month for living expenses." I wailed, my voice rising. "Fine, you won't give me money. I went out to find a job myself. But I step away for just a little while and you throw our daughter out like trash? She's your own daughter. Are you even human?" Mike's colleagues, already curious about the commotion at the entrance, now had front row seats to the drama. My outburst only fueled their interest and they openly gathered to watch. Mike was panicking now, visibly sweating. "I didn't refuse to give you money. Stop making things up. Let's go home and talk about this." But I wasn't letting him off so easily. Right there, in front of everyone, I pulled out screenshots of our past messages, displaying how I'd begged him for money while he responded with impatience and disdain. "Everyone, please judge for yourselves. Before I married him, I had a job and was financially independent. But he begged me to quit so I could take care of his paralyzed mother and our home. And now look at how he treats me." My tearful accusations, combined with the undeniable evidence, struck a chord with the onlookers. Sympathy quickly turned into disgust for Mike. His colleagues, male and female alike, watched with expressions ranging from pity for me to outright disdain for him. Even his male coworkers looked embarrassed to share a workplace with someone like Mike. Now visibly cornered, Mike stepped forward, trying to grab my arm. I shrank back dramatically, hiding behind the police officer. "Oh, don't hit me. I'll stop, okay? Please don't hit me," I cried, feigning fear. The female officer immediately stepped in, shielding me. "Sir, not only did you abandon your child, but now you're trying to assault your wife? You'll need to come back to the station to give a full statement." And just like that, both Mike and I were escorted to the station to make statements. His humiliation was complete. At the police station, Mike managed to get released only after repeatedly promising the officers that he would never abandon his daughter again. On the way home, he kept his temper in check, but as soon as we stepped inside, he exploded. "Mandy, are you out of your mind? You barged into my office and caused a scene. Who do you think you are? If you cost me my job, how are you planning to survive?" I met his anger with calm defiance. "You don't have to worry about that. I'll have a job soon enough." His laugh was full of disdain. "Oh please. With your education and how long you've been out of the workforce, who would hire you? You're kidding yourself. I've spent years running this household and taking care of you and your mother. My experience makes me more than qualified. Plenty of domestic staffing agencies would hire me." Mike scoffed. "You're talking about being a maid? That's your big plan? Do you even realize how humiliating that is?" I couldn't help but laugh at his hypocrisy. What's humiliating about earning an honest living? At least when I work for someone else, they'll respect me and pay me fairly. As a maid, I'd make $7,000 a month. Compare that to the $1,500 you begrudgingly give me while treating me like dirt. I'd say it's a win for me. Before we could continue arguing, Susan interrupted us. Mike, stop fighting and make me some food. I haven't eaten all day. Mike waved his hand dismissively and took a deep breath to calm himself. Fine, I'm done arguing. Just go make dinner already. Mom and Annie are hungry. I was hungry too, so I headed to the kitchen without another word. But when dinner was ready, I only made enough for myself and Annie. As I placed the food on the table, Mike tried to help himself, but I stopped him. This is for Annie and me. If you and your mom want to eat, make your own. Mike's face twisted with anger. Are you serious right now, Mandy? Do you even want to keep this marriage going? Don't forget you're living in the house I bought. If you don't want to play nice, we can get divorced and let's see where you'll live then. I let out a cold laugh. Divorce threats. How predictable. Yes, you bought this house. But I've been with you for years, contributing with my time, labor, and sacrifices. You want to talk money? Fine, let's talk money. Do you know how much a full-time caregiver costs these days? $5,000 a month. And if they have to care for someone disabled, it's even more. You've barely given me $3,000 a month for all these years. And that's if you even bother sending it on time. So let's settle accounts properly, deduct my rent, and then pay me for the years I've spent taking care of your mom. Let's see who ends up owing who. Mike turned beet red, stammering for a response but finding none. With no other options, he trudged to the kitchen and made some spaghetti for himself and Susan. The first bite Susan took, she spat out immediately. This is disgusting, way too salty. She turned her eyes longingly to the lemon shrimp on Annie's plate, clearly wishing she could trade meals. But this was just the beginning. From that day forward, I refused to take responsibility for anything related to Susan or Mike. I cooked only for myself and Annie, washed only our clothes, and left the rest to them. The house quickly descended into chaos. Susan especially bore the brunt of it. There were days when she soiled herself and had no one to clean her up. She would scream and cry, lamenting that she might as well die. The mess and constant complaints pushed Mike to his breaking point. Finally, after weeks of enduring the consequences of his own neglect, he broke. He came to me, his voice weary and filled with desperation. Mandy, I'm sorry. Please, let's work this out. When Susan had yet another incident, leaking onto her bed while Mike was in the middle of a video conference, the house turned chaotic again. Despite trying to maintain his professional demeanor, Susan's incessant yelling, complaining about her condition and demanding immediate attention, disrupted the entire meeting. After he ended the call, Mike finally broke down. He came to me, tears streaming down his face, his tone pitiful. I'm sorry, honey. I know I was wrong. You've worked so hard to take care of this family, and I shouldn't have treated you that way. Please forgive me just this once. From now on, I'll send you the living expenses on time. I'll even raise it to $3,000. No, wait, $4,000 a month. How about that? If this had been in the past, I might have caved. But now, I didn't need him anymore. The domestic staffing agency had already lined me up with a job. A family was looking for a caregiver to care for their mother, a double amputee with a difficult temperament. The position paid $7,000 a month. Temperamental? That was a non-issue for me. After years of dealing with Susan, I could handle anyone. They were impressed by my experience caring for a paralyzed family member and had recommended me to the family. The job started the next day. I looked at Mike and smirked. $4,000? Who are you trying to fool? Mike panicked, quickly changing tactics. Fine. I'll hand over my entire paycheck every month. We can go back to how things were before, okay? No. His voice trembled. Why not? I couldn't help but laugh, raising my voice just enough to ensure Susan could hear from the other room. Because I have a new job now. Starting tomorrow, I'll be working as a live-in caregiver for a double amputee. Guess what? They're paying me $7,000 a month. Mike scoffed, his disbelief written all over his face. $7,000? For a maid? You've got to be kidding me. You're being scammed. Oh, it's no scam. The pay is high because their mother has a terrible temper and has scared off every other caregiver they've tried to hire. But I'm not worried. No one's temper could possibly be worse than your mom's. Hearing that, Susan, who had been eavesdropping from her room, wheeled herself into the living room, her face pale with panic. "You're leaving? To be someone else's maid? What about me?" I looked her dead in the eye, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Well, you could always ask your precious son to hire a caregiver for you. But caring for someone with your personality? That's going to cost at least $10,000 a month. Otherwise, who would agree to take the job?" I glanced pointedly at Mike, my words slicing through the air. "But considering your son only makes $5,000 a month, hiring help would mean no money left for anything else. Guess you'll be eating air for dinner." Mike's face turned crimson with rage. "Fine, Mandy. You want to live like this? Then get out of my house. Either pay rent or pack your bags." The audacity. Still trying to bully me after everything. Without flinching, I pulled out my phone and recorded a voice message to my new employer. "Hi, Ms. Lucy. I've thought about your offer to live in and provide 24/7 care for your mother. I've decided I'm okay with that arrangement and can move in starting tomorrow." Ms. Lucy replied almost instantly, her voice full of gratitude. "Mandy, thank you so much. You're a lifesaver. Finding live-in help has been nearly impossible because everyone else prioritizes their own families. Since you're willing to stay, we'll add another $500 to your monthly pay." I replied sweetly, "Thank you, Ms. Lucy. I'll see you tomorrow." Hanging up, I turned to Mike and Susan with a smirk. "See? Some people appreciate my work and are even willing to pay me extra. Honestly, I should thank you, Susan. If it weren't for the years of verbal abuse and disdain, I'd never have the thick skin to thrive in this new job." Mike and Susan stood there, speechless, their faces a mix of anger and disbelief. Susan, unwilling to admit defeat, snapped, "Mike, hire a maid for me. I refuse to believe we can't find someone better than her." After everything fell apart, I packed my belongings, took Annie with me and moved out of the house. Susan initially tried to manipulate Mike into using Annie to keep me tethered, but after the police incident, Mike had learned his lesson. He knew better than to use Annie as leverage again. When I informed my new employer about my situation, including the fact that I needed to care for my child, she was incredibly understanding. She agreed that I could bring Annie with me to live at the house so long as Annie wouldn't disrupt the caregiving duties. To show my gratitude, I offered to forego the additional $500 raise she had promised for my live-in arrangement, stating that having a stable place to live with my daughter was enough. With that, Annie and I settled into a new, peaceful routine. Meanwhile, back at Susan's house, things were chaotic to say the least. My neighbor, who had become my eyes and ears on the situation, regularly updated me with amusing reports of Mike and Susan's ongoing struggles. Mike, desperate for help, had hired a cheap maid to care for Susan. At first, things seemed to be going okay. But knowing Susan as I did, I knew it wouldn't last. Sure enough, Susan quickly started nitpicking the maid's work, complaining about the cooking, criticizing how she was cared for, and making passive-aggressive remarks. It didn't take long for the maid to reach her breaking point and quit. Mike was forced to hire another, more experienced and higher-paid caregiver. But as anyone in that line of work knows, there's no need to endure abuse when you can easily find another job elsewhere. The second caregiver didn't last much longer than the first. Mike, already overwhelmed by his career's demands during a critical growth phase, couldn't handle the additional stress of managing Susan's constant complaints. Eventually he snapped. When the second caregiver resigned and Susan criticized him for being useless at finding someone competent, Mike stormed home after work and unloaded on her. For the first time, he blamed Susan directly. "It's all your fault. If you hadn't treated Mandy so horribly, she wouldn't have left and we wouldn't be in this mess." Hearing this from my neighbor made me roll my eyes. Of course, Mike would shift the blame entirely onto Susan, conveniently ignoring his role in driving me away. Yes, Susan had been terrible to me, but my breaking point had more to do with Mike. I had sacrificed my career and independence to support him and his family, only to be treated with disdain and to have to beg for even the smallest bit of financial support. To pin my departure solely on Susan was a masterclass in avoiding accountability. While I'd been enjoying this drama from afar, I realized there was nothing quite like witnessing it in person. So, at the end of the month, I decided to take a day off from work and pay Susan a visit. Not to help, of course, just to check in. I wanted to see how she was eating, whether she was sleeping well, and how she was holding up without me. After all, who better to evaluate the consequences of her choices than me? At the end of the month, I put on a carefully styled outfit, applied flawless makeup and went back to the house. As I stepped inside, I found Susan locked in yet another argument with her third hired maid. The maid, a woman in her 50s and about Susan's age, was being berated. Susan pointed her finger accusingly at the maid, insulting her for taking wages without working properly. "You're just a useless freeloader. I call for water and you take forever to bring it. What kind of maid are you? You should be the employer instead, you disgusting leech." When Susan noticed me enter, her tone shifted abruptly. "Oh Mandy, finally you're here. Look at this maid compared to you. You were the perfect daughter-in-law. You could tell when I needed help just by looking at me. If I so much as raised my hand, you'd know I needed to get up. And this one, I can't even get a simple glass of water without a fight." Her words were vile and the maid had had enough. "How dare you? Now you remember how good your daughter-in-law was? I've heard plenty from your neighbors. They said you treated her like dirt even though she worked herself to the bone for you. You don't deserve good help. You drove her away and now you're stuck with people like me, and guess what? I'm leaving too. For $2,000 a month, you think I'm going to let you abuse me like that? Keep dreaming." The maid tore off her apron, threw it at Susan and stormed out of the house. Susan was left fuming, steam practically coming out of her ears. But with the maid gone, she had no one to lash out at except me. She turned on the waterworks and started wailing. "Mandy, these days without you have been pure misery. These maids are so cruel. They take my money but refuse to care for me properly. I've thought it over and you were the best. I know I was wrong. Please come back. I'll treat you better, I promise." Hearing this, I felt a deep ache in my chest, but not out of pity. How did I let myself be reduced to this? For years, I allowed myself to be humiliated, insulted, and taken for granted by a woman who could barely move without my help. If I had stood up for myself sooner, if I had quit when things first became unbearable, would Susan or Mike have dared to treat me this way? Of course not. I realized now that it was my own lack of self-respect that had given these people the power to mistreat me. Ignoring Susan's pleas, I went straight to my room and started packing the remaining items for Annie and me. This house would never be my home again. Once we were fully moved out, I planned to file for divorce. I needed to cut ties with Mike and Susan completely and start fresh. Susan must have sensed my intentions because her panic escalated. "What are you doing? Where are you going? Are you just going to walk away from your husband and me?" I didn't answer. I simply continued packing. My silence drove her into a fit of rage. "I knew it. You're a selfish woman. You'd rather take care of strangers than your own family. You heartless witch. I'll sue you for abandoning your family." That did it. I couldn't hold back anymore. "Sue me? Go ahead. Let's see what the court thinks. I spent 6 years slaving away in this house taking care of you, only to be insulted and degraded every single day. You think the law will side with you, an abusive, petty old hag? You..." Susan stammered, her voice trembling with fury. "Don't you dare." I snapped. "If you ever insult me again, I swear I'll slap you so hard you'll think twice before opening that mouth. I put up with your nonsense for years, but not anymore. You think I'm an easy target? Think again." For once, my words left her speechless. I was nearly done packing when I noticed 2 of Annie's favorite Barbie dolls on the balcony. I walked over to grab them. Out of nowhere, Susan screamed like a banshee and hurled a mug at me. "You black-hearted bitch. I'll kill you." Instinctively, I ducked. The heavy ceramic mug missed me, flew through the open balcony door and tumbled straight down. My heart stopped. We were on the 10th floor. If that mug hit someone, the consequences would be catastrophic. I rushed to the balcony and leaned over. What I saw made my blood run cold. The mug had hit someone square on the head. The man staggered before collapsing onto the pavement, a pool of blood forming around him. I whipped around, seething. "Susan, do you even realize what you've done? That mug could have killed someone. Do you think Mike has enough money to pay for this?" Susan's face went pale, but she immediately went on the defensive. "This is your fault. If you hadn't moved, I wouldn't have missed. If anyone's paying, it's you, not me." I laughed bitterly. "Oh sure. Tell that to the police. They'll love hearing how your fingerprints are all over that mug. You'll pay for this, Susan, in more ways than one." I bolted downstairs to check on the injured man and called 911. When I got closer, my heart sank. The victim lying in a pool of blood was none other than Susan's beloved son, Mike. By the time the ambulance reached the hospital, Mike was already dead. The mug Susan threw from the 10th floor struck his head directly, killing him instantly. When the news reached Susan, she broke down into hysterics, her face wet with tears. "My son. My poor boy. How could this happen to you? What am I going to do now without you? My son." Her wailing echoed through the hospital hallways. But as her grief turned to rage, her tear-streaked face twisted into hatred. She pointed a trembling finger at me. "This is all your fault, you evil witch. You cursed my son. Why couldn't you be the one to die instead? Give me back my son, you heartless widow." Some people never take accountability for their actions. No matter what happens, they'll always find someone else to blame, as if shifting the responsibility can absolve them of their sins. But I wasn't going to put up with Susan anymore. I met her venom with equal fire. "Your son is dead because of you. You're the murderer. The one who should have died is you, you vile, hateful old hag." For a brief moment I understood why Susan always used such cruel, venomous language. It felt good to let out the hate. To lash back at someone who had made your life miserable. But dwelling on hatred doesn't solve anything. People need to learn when to stop and not let their lives be consumed by bitterness. After making my point, I didn't give Susan another second of my time. I turned and walked away. After all, I had more important things to do, like preparing to inherit Mike's estate. After Susan accidentally killed Mike, I reported the incident to the police. However, given her condition, paralyzed from the waist down, even if she were convicted, she would only serve her sentence outside of prison. Pursuing the case felt meaningless, so I decided to let it go. Mike was gone, and I had no intention of dealing with Susan any longer. Even though she inherited a portion of Mike's estate, I knew her life would be far from easy. As for the estate, the inheritance was split among the three of us. Annie, Susan, and me as the first-line beneficiaries. To avoid disputes, we divided everything according to the legal inheritance percentages. I left the house to Susan, fulfilling my duties as Mike's widow and showing her the last bit of kindness I had. But knowing Susan, I was certain that being a paralyzed woman with wealth would make her an easy target for opportunistic relatives. Unsurprisingly, she soon attracted family members from her maternal side, drawn in by the prospect of her inheritance. That wasn't my concern anymore. I only wanted to focus on raising Annie and building a stable life for us. Years later, I received news of Susan's passing. At first, I didn't plan to handle her funeral arrangements. However, I learned that she had left part of her inheritance to Annie, so I reluctantly returned to take care of things. That's when I discovered what her life had been like in her final years. After I left, Susan struggled without anyone to care for her. Distrustful of outside help and paranoid about protecting her wealth, she turned to a nephew from her maternal family. She offered him a deal. If he cared for her until her death, she would leave him the house. The nephew agreed and moved in with his wife and children. They even hired a lawyer to formalize the arrangement. At first, things were fine. The nephew genuinely cared for Susan and fulfilled his promise. But Susan's abrasive personality was something she could never change. Before long, conflicts arose between her and the nephew's wife. Unlike Mike, Susan's nephew wasn't the type to tolerate his wife being disrespected. Naturally, he took his wife's side, and it didn't take long for the family to start mistreating Susan. They didn't care about her well-being and only wanted her gone as quickly as possible so they could inherit the house. What they didn't expect was that Susan had a plan of her own. Behind their backs, she contacted her lawyer and altered her will, leaving the house to Annie instead of her nephew. When Susan finally passed, the nephew was furious. He attempted to contest the will, but I immediately involved the police to ensure the law was upheld. With a valid will in place, there was no room for dispute. Susan's nephew had no choice but to accept the outcome. I swiftly arranged Susan's funeral and wasted no time selling the house. With the money from the sale, I took Annie and left for good. The nephew and his family could fume all they wanted, but there was nothing they could do. Some people said Susan must have had a shred of conscience left to leave the house to Annie in the end. But I knew better. Susan never cared for Annie or me. She looked down on us her entire life. Her decision wasn't about kindness. It was about spite. She would rather see the house go to Annie than let her abusive nephew benefit from her death. If Susan had truly cared about Annie, she would have used the house as leverage to force me to care for her in her final years. In the end, though, her petty revenge worked in our favor. Her family tore each other apart, but the house came full circle back to Annie. It's funny how life works. Sometimes it seems like the universe really does favor those who try to do good.